Ahoy, matey, and welcome back to the Commodore's table. Today, we'll be discussing why you need to stop killing and start taking prisoners. Before you do, join our crew. Make sure you're subscribed, and let's hoist the black flag. What are the fates worse than death? Well, as a GM, you place a lot of time and energy into your campaign. But you can't forget about your players. Your players put a lot into their characters, and they get emotionally invested. And that's a good thing. You want them to be emotionally invested. But what happens when a player dies? Well, in low-level campaigns, they die, and that's it. There's nothing left. All of that time and energy and emotion that they put into their character is wasted. They have to bring in a new character. The campaign will get derailed. Some of what you built the campaign around will begin to fall apart. So this is why I say to GMs, don't kill your players. But not killing your players doesn't mean the gloves are on. It doesn't mean you're pulling punches. And this goes back to another video that I have on playing villains intelligently. So, if you want to learn about more intelligent ways to play your villains, yeah, check that out. But in this video, I want to talk more about the fates worse than death. So, you want your players to have fun. You want them to be invested in these characters, but you don't want to kill them. You shouldn't have it out for your players. Having it out for your players implies a spiteful nature to GMing, and that's one of the bad traits that you don't want to have. So what can we do? Well, one of my players actually said, he brought this up to me. He said, I don't like it when my character dies. Character death is horrible. You crit on me and you roll 2 natural 20s and she's dead, or he's dead. My player said, so I don't like it when we kill characters because I have to restart and it throws everything off. I said, okay, so what can we do? And his idea was this. He said, use maiming rules on me. So this is point 1, maiming rules. So fate worse than death, you have an archer. Well, an archer with no fingers cannot shoot a bow. And a great example of this and how characters can be built more effectively is in HBO series Game of Thrones. You see Jaime Lannister, he gets his hand cut off. His right hand, actually. So he's right-handed, he gets his hand cut off, and he needs to learn to fight with his left hand. But he's also extremely vain and has all this hubris and high amounts of charisma. So how does he deal with it? Well, he gets a metal hand attached, so it just looks like he's wearing a gauntlet from afar. This is one way in which the character develops. He thinks he's a cripple, he's down, he's depressed. So what can we look at? Well, charisma penalties. Obviously, penalties to attack. You can't use your primary hand, so you can't use a two-handed weapon. If your character is using, say, a bastard sword in 2 hands, he can't use that anymore. A shield. Might have trouble with a shield. So he could only use something like a buckler, for instance, even though he may use a large shield. Your character might have to switch to his offhand for his sword attacks. And being able to, in D&D, give him a penalty so that he doesn't have advantage, or just, some sort of -4 offhand penalty helps so much. But it also creates opportunities. Now, we know the character is going to be in the bar sulking. We know he's going to be drinking. He's going to... He's probably going to be Debbie Downer. And for a character with high charisma as well, say you have a paladin, this could be a big blow to the paladin, but it's also a role-playing opportunity for the rest of your characters to get around the other character. So, to use maiming rules, this is super helpful. Let's say you crit on somebody, you crit again, their character is going to die. Instead of death, they get maimed. And you as the GM have to choose what that maiming is, and based on how they're being attacked, you'll need to role-play that out. So that's one thing that I am a firm believer in, is maiming rules. So try that. Option 2. Characters are often built around equipment, and denying your characters that equipment can cause big blows to morale within your party. So when a player gets captured, they lose a lot of that, and it forces them to use their wits. In one of the Marvel movies, I think it's Iron Man 3, Iron Man loses his armor, and he has to figure out a way to just be Tony Stark and use his intelligence to figure out the problem. So what I always recommend to GMs is play your villains intelligently and remember what their motivations are. Now, players can be captured. And in ancient times, people used to ransom their people away. So if you have a high value knight, for instance, you will want to ransom that knight back to his lord. And that's going to give the capturing party more wealth and more power and more prestige. So this is a great thing if you use patrons in your game. And I have another video on how to use patrons effectively in your game. But if your character has a patron, which I think every GM should have, that patron can potentially be a source of rescue for the PCs without actually having an NPC come in. And I actually hate the idea of NPCs saving players in combat because it takes the focus off the players, and it actually disempowers the players, and they kind of lose their agency. So what you want is, if you capture the players, beat them down just enough so that when they go down or when they're bleeding, use non-lethal damage and just say the damage is non-lethal. It's not going to kill you because they're attempting to use, the hilt of their sword, or they're trying to just club you over the head or something like that. Yeah, is it going to hurt? Of course. Might it break some bones? Of course. If you're using maiming rules, it might also just knock them unconscious, and they'll have a concussion for a long time with lots of penalties until they get some sort of spell to fix it, or just spend some time recovering. Now, the great thing is this allows you some incredible opportunities. One of those opportunities is that it allows the patron to come to the PC's rescue and builds trust between that NPC patron and the PCs. But it also builds enmity between the villain and the PCs. You want them to hate your villains. I've had so many campaigns where I have villains that were unlikely, but they just popped up and the players hate them. Why? Because they were captured, because they were enslaved. Sometimes, okay, the players are enslaved. That sucks. They're in a slave pit or something like that. They're working the mines, and they have to find some way to break out. Well, a fighter is going to excel in that environment because all he's got to do is turn that big hammer on somebody and that helps. If you have a player with magic in the party, they can use their magic to get out. There are all sorts of ways to role play out the enslavement. And some players may not be okay with that, but that's just, you're going to have to talk to your party about that and understand whether they're okay with it. But in a medieval sense, this was also something that happened. So in ancient times, if you were of low value and you couldn't pay the ransom, they would just sell you. So that is an evil thing that evil people do. And if you have an evil villain that the players hate, they could put them to work in the mine, something like that, and the players have to escape. It creates opportunities to role play that out and prevent player death. And player death sucks, especially when you have so much invested. So, hope that helps. Our glass is empty. So,